Hi, welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name's Adam Hanlon, I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and I'd like to thank Icolite Underwater Systems for sponsoring this episode. Icolite make a great range of housings with ports and strobes and other accessories. Please head on over to icolite.com to check out what they do, and we'd like to thank them very much for sponsoring and making this episode possible. I'm joined today by our regular contributor, Alex Mustard. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Adam.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. I thought rather than let you get in first with a question, I thought I'd suggest a topic today. And I was keen to talk about a British marine biology professor who sadly died this week, and how he links into underwater photography. You know, he was a diver and a marine biologist, but he wasn't a photographer. But he was actually the only person who I know who's told the story of Louis Bouthan, the first underwater photographer. And as a result, his writings are really the only window that I have into Louis Bouthan. I thought that would be quite a nice thing to talk about, particularly with Trevor Norton, who died. I think he was in his 80s. He'd had a good long life. Trevor is very well known in the British marine biology world, as he was a long-time professor of marine biology at the University of Liverpool and ran their field station on the Isle of Man in Port Erin, which is a small village, I think, on the west side of Isle of Man. I went there myself as an undergraduate student for a field course. And I remember it was certainly a long way from anywhere exciting. And
it's just out there, actually. I mean, you can't. It's just out there from my house. So the ferry leaves every twice
Port
a day.
Erin, not the mile.
Yeah.
And he ran the field station there for a long time. But he's probably better known to the public as he was a very, very intelligent man and a very gifted writer. And he wrote with a lot of humor and also, in a very lyrical way. His books were very well received. And one that's, particularly well known in the diving world is a book called Stars Beneath the Sea, which I've got here, which is the extraordinary lives of the pioneers of diving. And he sort of tells them, their stories with a wry wit and a kind of an analytical scientist's brain. Yeah. And one of the stars that he profiles is Louis Bouthan. And through his writing, because he actually went to a lot of Louis Bouthan's actual writings and translated them from the French himself, you actually get a really original take on Louis Bouthan. And Louis Bouthan, for anyone who doesn't know, I was
going to say,
was the first man to take an underwater camera underwater and take pictures with it. And the majority of people who've been around underwater photography for a while have heard of him, but very few of us would recognize a picture of him. Very few of us have ever heard any of his thoughts on underwater photography. That's Louis Bouthan there.
There you go.
Yeah.
So he produced I presume it was a self-portrait, certainly a portrait underwater, I think in 1899, and that's largely described as being the first underwater photograph,
taken by someone who was down there
by someone from underwater as opposed to from the surface. So
you've robbed him of 7 years. It was 92, but 18.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, yeah, okay. So and that. He obviously French diver, but the majority of his writings were in French. So obviously, given that we're English speakers and my French is pretty shocking, that obviously means that we tend not to really hear a great deal about him apart from in works that are translated like Trevor's. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and that's why I think it was really interesting. And there's some great quotes which I was sort of keen to read out. Subjects for photography, however, are numerous and varied. But when you go down in a diving suit, the silt constitutes a serious obstacle to obtaining good underwater shots. He's straight into his photography chat. That's what I like. It's the pioneer of underwater photography, straight into his photography chat. The contrasts are not sufficient to give sharp blacks and whites. He needs some of those sliders in Lightroom. But, the challenges haven't changed.
130 years on, people are still stirring the silt up. It just shows that nothing.
The pictures obtained are necessarily dull. Yeah. At each step, the diver raises a cloud of mud. This is obviously in diving in a hard hat and standard dress, as we call it. At each step, the diver raises a cloud of mud, which stays in suspension for several minutes and darkens the water through which light rays must pass. He's properly into his photography here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I decided to look for a more favourable spot. I found it a little south of the laboratory in a cove, briskly washed by the swell. The bottom is carpeted with undersea meadows, which is Posidonia oceanica seagrass, We had International Seagrass Day this week, which dip in a gentle slope towards the high seas. Okay, and then just talking about his thing. Here is the procedure that I adopted to get my pictures. After having landed at the desired depth, I signaled to the captain to lower the different parts of the photographic equipment. Louis Bouthan's camera was pretty big. He wasn't going to be a friend of the airline.
Airlines.
Yeah. So this is a picture of, this is just a drawing of Louis Bouthan's camera. So it's a big old massive great thing that you couldn't swim around with. So he signaled to to lower his camera down. Where you go? I said, on the end of the line, I received the iron platform, the camera in its case, and the weight to anchor everything, because it was obviously, there was a lot of air in the case. The view chosen, I would set the base of the apparatus at leisure and arrange the camera in such a way as to only have to press the button to open the shutter. This done, I sent another signal to the captain, who held the line in his hand. This signal indicated that the exposure had begun, and I would wait patiently for the captain to indicate the end of the exposure. You understand, of course, that this is impossible to take a watch down in a diving suit to time the exposure. So there weren't any waterproof watches. So the captain
rope signals
had to time the exposure, because it was obviously long exposure photography, because the films weren't very sensitive. Thanks to this method I adopted, the difficulty was overcome, and the captain's job was to consult his watch and warn me in time when I had to close the shutter again, which I think is fantastic. And I had never seen those insights, from it. And that's, but I would, really encourage anyone to look up who's interested in the ocean. This book is about the diving, diving pioneers, and it's very entertaining and very educational. And Trevor's other book that I've got here is this one, which is a little bit of a biography of his life called Under the Water to Get Out of the Rain. And it's a story about his love of the ocean and his own personal journey in marine science. But it's very much a tale. This one was actually read on the radio here in the UK. You can see on the cover, it was actually serialized and read out, because it's just such a great tale and a great story. But I wanted to finish off this episode by just reading another quote by Boutan, which I think just places him absolutely amongst all us modern underwater photographers. And I'm so grateful for Trevor Norton actually translating these words and also obviously choosing what to share. Louis Bouthan is complaining that his pictures are not as aren't as sharp and as crisp as he'd want them to. And he says, is water an unsuitable medium for getting good photographs? He asks himself. The experience of these last 3 years has proved to me that the medium of water is no way guilty. And this is a bit I like. And that if the camera were improved, much better pictures would result. So ever since the very first underwater photographer, the one thing that unites us all is we all want a better camera.
Absolutely.
And if we had a better camera, our pictures would just be all that much better.
Yeah,
so I have to change at all in the.
I have to turn it on its head. Is that how many times have you been asked? People look at your pictures and they go, "You must have a really good camera."
Yeah, well, certainly easier to use.
It goes both ways,
and more travel friendly as well. So no, I just thought it was, I know many people watching, probably very few watching this, unless they've studied marine biology in the UK, will have heard of Trevor Norton. Some people may have come across his books. He is someone really worth seeking out. He was, in the days before scientists were well known outside their fields. He would, I think, if he was sort of in his pomp these days, he would probably be quite a well-known public figure. Because things like social media make people like that much more accessible. He's a fantastic writer. I might just, this is a little bit from his biography. I grew up beside a sullen sea rimmed with coal dust, and that's where I first felt the tug of the tide. But the whisper in the shells was a bluer ocean beyond the horizon, salt-scented and transparent, alive with strange creatures. So I searched for their shores, and this is the story of my journey. And then this is, he's a really, really talented writer, but also a writer who absolutely knew his stuff. And so this, I actually, you can see I've got like little post-its and things in the side of the book here for where, there's quotes in there that I maybe want to use in articles and things. And I often read his work when writing about particular marine life, because I think he always has an interesting, I remember he calls giant kelp super seaweed, and it just has a lovely turn of phrase on it.
But so Stars Beneath the Seas, the full title is Stars Beneath the Seas, Extraordinary Lives of the Pioneers of Diving. And obviously it mentions Louis Bouthan, but it also talks about John Scott Haldane, who primarily basically invented decompression theory. And he talks about William Beebe, invented the bathysphere. He talked about various others. So he selects 13 pioneers. We have a mousefish. Splendid.
Yes, well, it is International Book Day today, so he's just dressed up as a mouse for
very good
virtual school. So
hi, sir.
Right, off you go.
So it's a collection of other a collection of stories and discussions of a series of underwater pioneers. I think it probably is still in print. I don't know, Alex. Have you tried? Do we know?
I don't know, but I'm a big fan of secondhand bookshops.
Yeah.
And old books don't die. They can get reread and they can relive.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the great things of and really for very little money you can find these things. And the great thing is, so many of these secondhand bookshops now that the stock goes online and you can find it on eBay or you can find it on secondhand bookshops. Online bookshops. So but Trevor Norton stuff's really worth seeking out.
So if you're looking for a potential author to entertain and educate yourself through the rest of lockdown, there's a good option. Check out, have a look for Trevor Norton. Obviously, it's very sad that he has left us this week. So but thank you very much, Alex. And thanks again to our sponsor for this episode, iCollite. iCollite, again, wonderful series. Wonderful housings and droves. Please check out iCollite.com. Please feel free to give this episode a like if you enjoyed it, and feel free to add any suggestions or comments about the episode in the suggestions section. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you next time.